I'm Stacey Marie Ishmael, managing editor of crypto for Bloomberg News. And this is Bloomberg Crypto, a daily Bloomberg iHeart podcast. It's Friday, June 24th. Before the Russian invasion of Ukraine in February, the Ukrainian government and the crypto community did not quite see eye to eye. There was skepticism, distrust, and even a few police raids on unlicensed crypto exchanges. But since the war broke out, there's been a shift. Digital asset leaders in Ukraine are now hailed, by some, as heroes because of their work with the Ukrainian government to finance the war effort. And they're scoring some big successes along the way. Ukraine's Deputy Minister for Digital Transformation has said that crypto donations enable the army to buy military equipment and medicine. Today, I'm joined by Bloomberg reporter Alistair Marsh to talk through his reporting on how Ukraine has been using crypto during the war to support its armies and its population. Alistair, thank you so much for being our guest today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We are going to talk about the war in Ukraine from a crypto angle, which for folks who haven't been following along closely might seem like a little bit of a strange way to tackle this topic. So I'd love for you to set the stage about what, as it relates to Ukraine and crypto, has been interesting, but also been a sometimes controversial place for the industry and how that has changed in light of the war with Russia.
Well, so the situation in Ukraine when it comes to crypto is in many ways not dissimilar to the experiences that you've had in many other countries, in that the authorities have been suspicious, to say the least, of crypto. But what's been really amazing to witness, obviously this is in some ways a smaller story of the broader struggle that Ukraine has been through and the incredible journey that the Ukrainian people have been on these last months. But one sort of small chapter of that is how the attitudes towards crypto have changed fundamentally, because a couple of years ago, actually, Ukrainian authorities viewed crypto with deep skepticism, and there were frequent raids of crypto exchanges and anyone involved in crypto activity, from both the special services and other government bodies. It was viewed as, sort of the classic idea of this is just drug money and this is money for illicit purposes, and there's no good use for this technology or that type of asset. But actually the war experience has totally transformed that. It's been kind of miraculous to see that actually the war effort is being financed in part by crypto, and crypto is playing a critical role in enabling the government to source military equipment, humanitarian aid, all kinds of sort of necessities that it needs.
Despite the relentless onslaught of Russian forces, Ukraine's vital tech sector is still operating for clients around the world. While Ukraine's own tech leaders are helping support the war effort and working around the clock to keep their own employees safe. Right now, so you're holding up your phone.
One of the things that really struck me when we were doing reporting on the situation with crypto in Ukraine after the Russia invasion was how many developers, protocols, the kinds of bits of crypto infrastructure that people have come to rely on are maintained either out of the Ukraine or by Ukrainian devs. And, given that environment, were you more or less surprised that crypto then emerged as this lifeline during the war?
You're definitely right that there was a very vibrant local crypto scene in that there were, many developers locally. There were protocols based, people working on various projects in Ukraine. And actually, Michael Jorbanian, who's head of the Kuna crypto exchange, the biggest exchange in Ukraine, who I'm sure we'll be talking about in a moment, he called the crypto scene wild back in the day. And it was both wild, one, because you had the sort of the government suspicion and crackdown of which I've just spoken, but also because you kind of had a real vibrant local scene where you had many people working on different projects, and there was a real buzz about it. He talked about meetups where there would be hundreds of people, into the thousands gathering on a weekly basis. That's very different to any experience that I've had in London. So there was this sort of acceptance of crypto, both in terms of having plenty of Ukrainians working in the industry, but also there are statistics showing that Ukraine is either the first or certainly in the top 3 in terms of countries globally that use crypto. So there's kind of this underlying acceptance among the people. It was just sort of at the government level that there was a suspicion. And now that's totally transformed. So I guess it's sort of an aligning of government and state with the people.
And you mentioned Michael Jorbanian, who's really been instrumental in making that alignment happen, right? So he's sort of apocryphally known as the father of the crypto scene in Ukraine. You interviewed him at the very beginning of the war by voice memo back and forth to hear more about the developments at the time. And one of the big things that was happening, in the days immediately following Russia's invasion of the country was the crypto community rallied around philanthropy in a way that was, I don't want to say unprecedented, but at least remarkable, in that they were donating millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of crypto to the Ukrainian government. And what was really unusual was that they were doing that to the Ukrainian government's own wallets. What was Jorbanian's role in making this happen?
Right. Well, he is actually a really fascinating character. I mean, when I said that I'd heard he was the godfather of crypto, in Ukraine, he laughed and said, "Yes, that's what they call me."
I was the first guy who actually started publicly speaking about the crypto. The first guy who actually did, to be honest, there's a lot of stuff that I did first, like the first ATM, first public trade, first company, first exchange, first OTC, first, a lot of first.
So we spoke, early March. So the war had been going on just over 2 weeks at that point. And this was the point when it was clear that the Ukrainian government was asking or essentially forcing all military age men, 18 plus men, to stay in the country and fight. So I assumed when I spoke to him that he would be, somewhere in the trenches or, doing some kind of army job.
No, I didn't join the army because I'm not really a good army man. I'm good with guns, but only in theory. So my job is being a crypto banker for the government. So I'm in charge of collecting, fundraising, storing crypto, exchanging crypto to crypto, exchanging crypto to fiat, opening the bank accounts for intermediaries or for the government, so we can change crypto to fiat and then wire them to our accounts, and with those accounts we can buy some wherever is required by the Ministry of Defense.
And there's some statistics that the numbers keep changing, but the government puts them out on Twitter from time to time, the Ukrainian government, and they say that something like, I think it's 5,000, it's probably more than that now, bulletproof vests. And then there are pictures of them having, there are pictures, there's the Deputy Minister of Digital Transformation, which is a wonderful title. And he puts on his Twitter feed, if you ever are inclined to look, pictures of armored vehicles and weapons and bulletproof vests and all kinds of things that have been bought with crypto. Mm-hmm. So it's quite remarkable, really.
We'll be right back to talk about the innovative ways crypto is helping the war effort in Ukraine. Kuna, to that point about Jorbanian being the crypto banker, he has been, I remember one of the stats in March was that of the $100 million or so that the government had raised at that point, and it's way more than that at this point, he was managing like 60% of that money on their behalf to buy that military equipment and other supplies that you're describing. So it seemed like it's a pretty important and probably very complicated role right now.
For sure. And also in some ways a little bit, probably goes against the grain a bit of his own background. To be working for the state is kind of a funny thing for a crypto guy to do. But it's, I guess, all part of the sort of patriotic national effort to beat the Russians and to supply what the people need. So, yeah, I'm not sure he would have ever imagined that he would be working for the government, but that's where he finds himself. And you're right, it is quite an important role.
The battle for Donbass remains Russia's strategic focus, and territorial gains have been slow in the face of stiff Ukrainian resistance.
Well, I'm glad you raised that point about the tension between, the anti-government libertarian roots of a lot of crypto and a lot of people in the scene, and the fact that so many people rallied to give money not just to a government, but to a military. And, it's certainly been an interesting and challenging time for, I suppose you could call them the crypto purists, who have, been for years saying the point of these tokens, the point of this ecosystem is to avoid government interference of any kind, and to have, a bunch of folks who were very influential in the industry. You had the heads of exchanges, you had the inventor of Ethereum, all saying, hey, this is a good cause and we should rally around that, was really quite remarkable indeed.
I think it exposes a lot of kind of the tensions and contradictions within crypto. I mean, here's a kind of a proof of concept that Bitcoin and kind of crypto in the broader sense has a social utility. Crypto is providing almost like a humanitarian service here. Well, in some ways it's not surprising, but you're right. It does kind of go against the grain of
the ethos.
Yeah, the kind of anti-libertarian stuff.
Indeed. And to the point about the G in ESG, the idea of corporate governance, it certainly raised a lot of interesting issues around sanctions and sanctions evasions, because one of the things that Ukraine was also calling for was for exchanges to ban not just people who are on the Russian sanctions list, but any Russian citizens at all. And even the exchanges that had been very supportive of, Ukraine's crypto efforts came out and said, no, we're not going to do that. If somebody's on a sanctions list, we will absolutely comply with that sanctions list. We will make sure that we're not allowing them to use our services in any way, but we're not going to ban everyone with a Russian passport from using these services.
Yeah, you're right. It is really interesting. And also, what should be the response to the state? What should be the response to regulators and so on? That is still an open question. I mean, like the stories about Binance, for example, just shows you that we're in a world of greater sort of regulatory and government interest and oversight of the crypto markets. So I guess you've got to be careful how crypto businesses have to be more and more careful.
Absolutely.
What line they tread here.
Yeah, and Binance is in the news because of a blockbuster Reuters report that they had been responsible for helping to launder a couple of $1 billion worth of crypto that was associated with a North Korean hacking group known as Lazarus, which they have, of course, scrupulously denied, but certainly something that is going to get, to your point, even more governmental scrutiny and quite likely regulation in the coming weeks and months.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. Was this whole idea about how, and going back to my point about crypto being sort of providing a social good here, is that, crypto, I think the Ukrainian situation, the war has proved that Bitcoin and crypto can provide great utility, great social benefit, but also can be used to finance terrible things too. So the sort of the argument about it's all just drug money and terrorist financing, well, maybe, but there's also this side too. This is a very, in my mind, Jorbanian in Ukraine, this is a very positive story for crypto and Bitcoin, that it's helping people in desperate need to fight against an oppressor. And, that's a wonderful story to tell.
Well, that is a very positive note on which to end. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
You can find more of his reporting on the Bloomberg terminal on Bloomberg.com, and find him on Twitter at Alistair J. Marsh. On the next episode of Bloomberg Crypto, California's Silicon Valley is both a place and a philosophy, often hailed as the place for US tech startups to get their start. VCs, or venture capitalists, are an integral part of this mythology. These are the people who provide the private capital, billions of dollars worth, so these startups can chase the next big thing. Despite the volatile crypto market, some of those VCs are still betting big on the potential of the blockchain. For the latest on this, we'll talk to Bloomberg reporter Hannah Miller about how crypto is influencing VC and vice versa. I'm Stacey Marie Ishmael, and this is Bloomberg Crypto, a daily podcast from Bloomberg and iHeartRadio. For more shows from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Email your questions, comments, or suggestions for the show to crypto@bloomberg.net. And find us on Twitter. We're @crypto. The supervising producer and editor of this episode is Vicky Vergolina. Our producer is Mohammed Farouk. Desta Wonderad is our engineer. Original music by Leo Sidran. Bloomberg's head of podcasts is Francesca Levy.